Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
how the UK is becoming a third world economy.
London, the city of dreams and one of the wealthiest urban areas in the world. Its economy is worth roughly £508 billion, which equals $652 billion. If it
Who did this video?
Do we know them?
No, we never reacted to them before. Caspian Report.
Never heard of it.
were an independent state, London would rank as the 22nd largest economy in the world, precisely above Argentina and Sweden.
Wow.
However, London's
Above Sweden. Wow.
prosperity and that of southeast England is atypical for the country. This small area makes up nearly half the UK's GDP while having about a third of its population. If one were to amputate London's output, it would reduce British living standards by 14%, just enough to slip ahead of the US state of Mississippi. Yeah, the UK has seen better days. The last 10 years have been particularly tough.
I don't understand. Was that comparison with Mississippi?
That's really bad.
The UK was sitting 49th out of the 50 US states, narrowly squeezing in ahead of Mississippi. Oh, if London left, I guess.
And it was just the rest of the UK.
Okay.
Real disposable income, which is income after taxes and benefits, has remained almost unchanged. The cost of goods and services has gone up. Compared to a decade ago, people can buy less with their income.
That's tough, man. And shit, it's not changed.
Meanwhile, productivity is low, one of the lowest of any major economy, and housing has become nearly unaffordable, with the UK holding the record for the highest number of homeless people in the developed world. The cause for these issues...
Oh.
That's interesting. Because we see, Europeans coming here, their impressions in the States, and a lot of homeless people, which is true, it was for me too, but I didn't realize UK also had this problem.
When you went, do you remember what it was like?
I don't remember the homeless at all. I didn't feel like it was any different in Lithuania in that sense. Wow.
is rooted in past political decisions. Britain has slumbered and stumbled its way through a number of setbacks. Now, the crisis has become endemic with no quick fix in sight. When you think about it, it's ironic. The UK was the first country to industrialize. Now, it stands to become the first to deindustrialize. Seen from a larger angle, Britain's economy is on a downward trajectory. Prices are rising too fast. Just recently, housing prices rose by more than £2,200 in a month. Unfortunately, this wasn't widely reported in the media. Looking at things from all angles is what we do, and Ground News provides us with invaluable insights to do exactly that. That's why we reached out to them to cover of the algorithm. That's why we Ground News feed on ground that the media news / keep in mind. Not long ago, Britain was considered one of the world's most prosperous nations and a prime destination for skilled professionals seeking to advance.
Not long ago. I don't think that's fair. I think they still are, though. I mean, maybe they are experiencing issues, but to say that they're no longer considered that.
Considered what exactly?
One of the most prosperous countries. That's what he said. He said not long ago they were considered, which kind of implies that they're no longer considered, which I don't think is true.
It's their careers. Today, not so much. The state
exactly. Today, not so much. I disagree. I think they're still considered a world power.
I thought what he said was travel destination, like because we saw the arrows
let's
moving
re-listen.
to him.
Considered one of the world's most prosperous nations and a prime destination for skilled professionals seeking to advance their careers. Today, not
So basically saying that it's a good place to go live and get a job.
Good talent.
Yeah. Which I still think it is. I disagree with this.
so much. The state is under incredible socio-economic strain, more so than people realize.
Well, maybe that's because I don't realize it then.
Back geopolitical shockwaves have left it with a colossal debt. Brexit, COVID, and the Ukraine war. The catalyst, however, dates to 2008, when the financial crisis introduced long-lasting effects. Like everyone else, Britain was deeply injured, but the way it handled the fallout set it apart from the rest of the developed world. After borrowing roughly £141 billion to bail out British banks, the government opted for austerity measures instead of investing in fiscal and social policies. There were no significant tax cuts or minimum wage increases. There was no inflation control, no housing assistance, no job creation programs, You get the point. For ordinary citizens, the consequences were devastating. Real household income dropped and then flatlined for the next 15 years. In economic terms, this is known as a lost decade. For added perspective, in 2007, the average British household was 8% less prosperous than those in Norway and just 6% behind those in the United States. In the years following, the deficit grew substantially. Today, British households sit 20% behind Norway and 16% behind the US in terms of real income. This drop in living standards is felt vividly among the middle class. Real household income
That's stuff I didn't realize though, wow.
is a fundamental driver of economic activity. It encourages consumer spending and improves living standards, all of which contribute to economic growth. In Britain, however, the government prioritized corporate interests above all else. But even here,
Same as here though.
in the corporate world,
I can't think of a place that doesn't.
I think a lot of Europe they don't actually. In America they do though. I didn't know Britain did it also. But in Europe I feel like it's not really prioritized the corporate interest.
the gains were mostly short-term. The productivity rate was left on the back burner, and no significant investments were made in this domain. For context, increasing productivity is one of the most efficient ways to grow an economy. But, contrary to popular belief, improving productivity does not mean working harder. Instead, the point is to boost economic output without increasing the amount of work. So, when an agriculture-driven economy switches to manufacturing microchips, productivity increases because the tech industry is more profitable and has greater margins. Ergo, the workforce is getting more out of it for the same amount of labor.
Do you hear that? The pure panic of a cyber attack.
That's why Japan is turning farmland into factories. It adds to productivity and ultimately improves the economy.
Wow.
In the UK,
But I don't
That's a
know.
big decision.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a good decision to turn farmland. So how are we gonna make food? I mean,
Food.
that's important. Still, it's what. So are we moving towards making food in the lab? I don't know if I like that.
productivity output per capita debilitated after the 2008 crisis due to a lack of investment. This chart by the London School of Economics puts things into perspective. Before the crisis, productivity was growing at nearly 2% annually. After the crisis, however, it weakened substantially, changing a trend that had been in motion since the 1980s. The British
Yeah, like I mean, it is noticeable on the chart that has kind of flatlined.
workforce now has the second lowest productivity rate among the G7 economies, whereas before the 2008 crisis, it was second only to the US. The simultaneous effects of sluggish real household income and low productivity explain a lot about the performance of the British economy. It is essentially fighting for its life.
Oh wow.
Britain's lost decade happened so casually, so indifferently, that none of its political parties acknowledged it, let alone addressed it. There was no political discourse on this subject that was affecting millions of households. But it was a crisis nonetheless, and so the discourse expressed itself in the form of Brexit. However, the uncertainty over Brexit made a bad situation even worse. It had a particularly sharp effect on direct foreign investment. According to the Bank of England, Brexit reduced investment by 25%, measured from 2016 to 2021.
So how did they not see that coming? That is my thing. Like, did they just not care? It was more about the principle, or like I don't know.
What's more, soon after Brexit, the onset of COVID exacerbated the economic crisis that was
I guess they couldn't predict COVID. That's true.
brewing underneath. The government stepped in and borrowed an additional £280 billion in its response to the coronavirus. This was deemed necessary to get the nation through the pandemic. But here's the thing, most of the COVID bailout was borrowed when interest rates were at historic lows, sitting around 0.1%. At the time, repayments were expected to be relatively manageable, and this might have been true were it not for the final nail in the coffin, the Ukraine war. The minute the Russians began their full-scale assault, access to Russian oil and gas was halted by sanctions and trade restrictions. At the same time, an energy crisis started brewing, and the cost of living jumped across Europe. The crisis hit close to home. British households were projected to pay 3 times the previous price just to heat their homes during the winter. Much of the public was anxious, so the British government intervened again. This time, it was one of Europe's most generous in financial support. Between 60 billion and 100 billion pounds in additional spending went straight into Britain's debt. The damage to households was mild, but the bailout gave the UK its biggest increase in debt as a share of its GDP. The synthesized pandemic crisis and energy crisis pushed inflation rates to new highs. In response, central banks ramped up the interest rate. For ordinary citizens, this meant that mortgage payments went up overnight by hundreds of pounds.
Wow.
Meanwhile, for the government,
That's fucked up. Because I know in Europe, like here, it's like static. Like in interest rate, it's flat. So like if I sign a contract, it's gonna be this. It's gonna be this for the whole duration. In Europe, I know from my parents too, it's variable. So it varies month to month in the interest rate. Yeah.
a high interest rate added additional billions to the national debt. While before, debt repayments were believed to be...
That's really fucked up for people.
No.
Because you buy...
How long are normal debts?
No, not the length, the interest rate.
Yeah, but how long
is the
debts?
contract?
Yeah.
I think 25 years, kind of like
Whoa.
here. The mortgage.
And it could be random?
Well, not random, but tied to this. So, yeah, like you can... It's not common to lock in. I think it's possible, but it's either harder or more expensive to lock in.
Oh.
But here, once you lock in, you locked in with the rate. They can't just raise it on you randomly. Yeah, so this is a big problem for people. Yeah, that's fucked up.
Relatively manageable after the energy crisis.
Imagine you signed one thing, you think you're gonna pay like X
That's
amount.
I don't think it's fair.
Like a year later, you're paying £200 more.
Okay. I understand if it's a slight difference, but to jump it significantly and have that expectation for people to still pay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Debt became increasingly expensive to pay off. Servicing debt jumped from £40 billion per year to about £100 billion per year. That is a staggering £60 billion increase in spending, which is nearly the entire British defence budget. So, yeah, although admirably, Britain's support to Ukraine essentially broke its economy. Britain's debt interest bill is now the country's second largest item of spending. The surge in debt...
Yeah, the war in Ukraine fucked up a lot of countries.
...has reduced available funds by tens of billions of pounds, limiting spending on other items. Nearly all the country's public services are affected by...
How has the war in Ukraine affected Russia?
I mean, they're not doing well either, though, to be fair. They lost a lot of troops in there. I don't know.
Which then depreciates the quality
They're
public
definitely not better off than before the war, that's for sure.
services can provide.
Wait, sorry, this decision was not... Is it rational? Is it not rational?
No, it was egotistical, I think.
At its core, economics is about more than markets and money alone. It is about understanding the choices people make and how demographics drive those decisions. Economics is essentially the study of people, not just numbers. After the COVID lockdowns subsided and life returned to normal, every advanced economy witnessed a surge in the workforce. People found jobs and moved on with their lives. This chart shows the change in economic activity among the G7 nations between 2019 and 2023. Britain stands out. Its workforce never recovered. It just stayed low. A smaller workforce has all sorts of ripple effects. It means less taxes to pay for services like healthcare and greater expenditures on social benefits. It also means people have less money to spend, which hurts businesses and affects the number of jobs available in an economy. So the consequences go full circle. But Britain's workforce problem goes much deeper than the missing 1%. Officially, unemployment in Britain is low by historical standards, sitting at 4.4%, which amounts to 1.5 million people. But reality paints a different picture. Britain's workforce is missing a staggering 11 million people. The government doesn't...
The thing with an unemployment rate, by definition, it only counts the people that are actively looking. And I think they have to have been unemployed for less than 6 months. I think after 6 months, you stop counting as unemployed, I believe. I mean, this was a long time since I took economics in college, but I think that was the definition of the unemployment rate. So that's an important statistic. if the duration is only the past 6 months, if you couldn't find a job in 6 months and you're no longer considered unemployed, that's a problem because there can be a lot of people that don't find jobs in 6 months. But let me actually look up the definition though.
To consider it unemployment though, calling it economically inactive instead. The reasoning is that this group, amounting to 9.4 million people, is technically not looking for work or is available to start a job.
Right, so I think that's exactly what I just said. They're past that number.
The Office for National Statistics explains the motives. About 2.1 million, aged between 16 and 24, are students and thus economically inactive. About 3.5 million of those over 50 years old are out of the workforce due to sickness and early retirement. Meanwhile, at least 1 million people aged between 25 and 49 years do not work because of caring responsibilities. A workforce missing 11 million people is no small matter, but businesses need to keep running regardless. This puts tremendous pressure on the government and
Well, here it says people who have not looked for work in the past 4 weeks are not included in this measurement. I don't know. I don't remember that, but I do remember, I think it was 6 months, but maybe the definition changed. I don't know.
one way to offset the difference is by opening the borders. So British lawmakers did just that. More people from outside the UK immigrated to the country to work with South Asia and
So
Sub-Saharan
when they
Africa.
say open the borders, they open up like they offered work visas. Like is there
Yeah,
like
probably,
a number
yeah.
that they're willing to
Yeah,
accept?
I think so.
Standing out. These migrant workers fill the gaps left by a reduced workforce. But simultaneously, the rapid and large-scale influx of immigrants has raised social tensions within the nation. People feel threatened by the changing ethnic demographics, and some lawmakers exploit such moods to score political goals. In early August 2024, anti-immigration protests and riots rocked Britain, affecting over 20 towns. While the riots have peaked, addressing the origins will take much longer to fix. In its entirety, Britain's economic chronicle, marked by a continuous decline, illustrates how one crisis triggers another and yet another, and ultimately leads to a chain of events from which there is no immediate relief. This is the bed that was made, and now people must sleep in it. On the plus side, every nation goes
But
through
that's
ups
tough
and downs.
because it doesn't seem like what's the resolution, because we talk about all this and then now okay, let's discuss some resolution, some possible
Yeah, the
That's
economy in
what it is.
the whole Europe is not looking bright right now. It is not looking good.
And the UK is no exception. London is still one of the wealthiest and most innovative cities on the planet. Eventually, things will get better. But until then, Britain will function like a third world economy attached to London.
So, I guess the claim is that not the whole country is third world, but outside of London is third world. That's what they're saying. Interesting claim. I don't know if I agree. Guys, if you live not in London, well, how do you feel? Because that's kind of what matters, you know.
How I see it is like if London is a lot of income is coming from there, I think of New York City, like New York, like Wall Street, where all the money is poured into
That's exactly what it is.
And it's kind of structurally set up already like that for the government, because there's protocols and processes that have been set up for it to be this way. And in the outskirts, the suburbs are like more for homes, not too much like maybe like agricultural focus, as opposed to making these financial kind of jobs, the Wall Street type of jobs. So that's how I see London. So I wonder, okay, this data that they took, the economy is booming in London, but what is the other cities? Where do they strive, and what are their strengths?
Right. I think that's what he's saying. I don't know other cities.
Because I don't think you could grow crops in London.
Well, yeah, no, you grow crops like outside of London. Other cities, I would think they would be like industrial, stuff like that. London is definitely business center, like kind of as you said, kind of New York, all the financial centers is that. But that's not the only jobs available.
Yeah.
So
I wonder how diversified they are. Like for example, South Korea, they rely on the Chaebol family to contribute most of its income.
you know what just hit me. Remember we saw Ireland is supposedly like very rich because of like some sort of like tech companies going there because of low tax or something. I feel what would have to happen maybe for the smaller towns, I don't know, Liverpool, Manchester, they create some sort of incentives, like maybe tax incentives for the companies to come into those towns, not in London, but into those towns to kind of bring up the economy there a little bit, something along the lines, I don't know, because you kind of want to stop depending on London. So I mean, I guess it's not bad, it's not like London is going to disappear either, so I don't, but it is not bad just from, you know,
just to become more diverse.
Yeah, to diversify a little bit, to kind of create opportunities, because also I guess London is not going to disappear, but there's only so many rooms in London people can live in. Eventually it's going to run out of space. So if you want to,
and you shouldn't be overly dependent on one area for your income,
right? Because, you know, theoretically if somebody drops a bomb on London, boom, you know, that's not going to happen, but still. So yeah, kind of spread out the population a little bit away from London into other cities. I think that's what you kind of have to do.
The thing is, London, there's so much appeal. Like, you want to live in London. Like, I like some cities you don't really have heard of.
I think
because of marketing.
Appeal is money. If you know, if you need money, you won't go where the money's at. I mean, yeah, there's appeal.
Yeah, but that's for like older people. Like for the younger.
But beggars can be choosers if you need to.
You don't understand that at that time.
But there's gonna be people who wanna go because beggars can be choosers. If you about to live on the street, you won't go to Manchester, Liverpool, or wherever. You know, whatever you gotta do.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.